Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
8:37 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Brian Wilson, Tori Clark in today for Brian Neiman, still on paternity leave, be back later this week. We are pleased to be joined on the line by Senator Rand Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, and the author of a new book called Government Bullies, How Everyday Americans Are Being Harassed, Abused, and Imprisoned by the Feds. We in Texas, we say harassed. Other people call it harassed. But anyway, how do you say it, Senator?
I harassed. Definitely got to be harassed. So, imprisoned, I think, is the same across the country, but pretty scary if your government's putting you in jail for putting clean dirt on a low area of your backyard.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're going to get into more of that in a moment. I want to start by talking about the situation we find ourselves right now in foreign policy. And you have made the case that maybe what we need to do right now is yank the aid that is now going to places like Egypt, Pakistan, and Libya. Tell us why you feel that way, and tell us why you think it's the right thing to do.
Well, I think if you want to be an ally of the United States, you have to act like it, and I think at the very least our money should be contingent upon behavior. So if you want to look at us, cash your check from the United States taxpayer, and then laugh at us and tell us that our friends will be tortured and imprisoned, such as they did to Dr. Afridi, the doctor who helped us to get bin Laden. He was tortured, kept in prison without trial for a year, now is in jail for life. And basically the head of the Pakistani security agency recently just said, yeah, come talk to us in 10 years. Well, my response is, yeah, you come back and talk to us in 10 years about more money then.
Senator, this is Tori Clark, and thanks for being with us. It all seems to make so much sense when we hear you say that, but we were just talking with Dr. Jasser, a very moderate Muslim voice, and we asked him the same question about pulling aid out, and he says, look, exactly now is when you don't want to disengage. If we disengage completely in that way, then you just cede the field, if you will, to the troublemakers like the Iranians, the Russians, and others. So he says...
What I would say is it doesn't have to mean disengagement. So I'm not saying don't have diplomatic ties. I'm not saying don't trade. I'm not even saying don't sell weapons to some of these countries. What I'm saying is that you can't bribe people to be your friends, and that there's a certain responsibility on their side. If we're going to give billions of dollars to a country like Pakistan, they need to respect us, and they need to not treat our friends with torture and imprisonment.
You've also said of late that what we need to do as Republicans is that we need to be a little more libertarian when it comes to foreign policy and an engagement around the world. In other words, you said maybe we need to let people know that it's not the stated policy of the United States that we can and will, if we have to, drop a bomb on anybody we need to tomorrow.
Right. And really, I think we need to get away from engaged or disengaged, because what I'm talking about is maybe being a little bit less involved, but a little bit less involved with troops and with that type of aggression. And so what I would say, yes, there are times when we need to be involved. I think we needed to go to Afghanistan. We can't let people attack our country. We can't let people organize to attack our country. So there definitely is a place for involvement. But I think there are two poles in foreign policy. One pole is that we're everywhere all the time, and the other pole would be that we're nowhere any of the time. And I think we need to find somewhere closer to the middle. And really, I'm just really saddened by every report out of Afghanistan. And we've gotten bin Laden, and that was something that was still sort of lingering over our head after 10 years. But we've now gotten him. It's chaos over there in a civil war. And, Karzai's the king of disrespect as well over there. So I really think that it's sort of like people on welfare here at home. Conservatives say, well, we need to make them self-sufficient, so we have to remove some of that aid at some point in time. And I think the same has to happen for Afghanistan, Pakistan, and these other countries. And, if they want to be our friend, England's our friend, but we don't send England any money.
Yeah, good, fair point. Okay, so as you look at the presidential landscape right now, how do you see things shaking up?
I've been one that's been a little bit more optimistic than many, that I think we've won the battle of the hearts and minds of the people. I think the Tea Party movement in 2010, the return to constitutional government, the belief in balanced budgets, I really think we are the majority of the country. Now, of course, I'm traveling around Kentucky more than I am Chicago at this point, and so I may be getting a skewed perception or perspective, but I do think we've won that battle and we're going to win. I think Romney will win in the fall. And I think it'll be one of these elections where it appears to be close, and then may spread apart at the very end if he does a good job in the debates, which I think are going to be important.
Do you think the Tea Party's playing as big a role this year as it did 2 years ago? In 2010, at 50 days out, all we were all talking about was the Tea Party and its influence, and there was enormous energy and excitement around the Tea Party. Is it as vibrant this year?
Well, it's different. I think they've embedded themselves more into the Republican Party, into the workings of it. I think, they weren't jumping up and down. Romney wasn't first choice in the Republican primary. But what I would say is with the Supreme Court upholding Obamacare, really the only answer now for Obamacare, which was a big motivating force for the Tea Party, is an election, and is to elect Romney. And I think the Tea Party all sees that. I think they'll turn out. I think as a base, they're still pretty enthused, and really in some ways more enthused than the base on the left. On the left, I think a lot of the kids were excited about Obama ending a war that he's now doubled and tripled in Afghanistan. And also, I think the African-American community came out in a huge way for Obama the first time. I don't see that same degree of enthusiasm.
I'm sort of with you on that, because it's been my observation that the Tea Party is still there. They're just operating in a much different way. They're operating, as you said, somewhat more within the system, but also they're not being as public as they once were. I mean, you don't see Tea Party people showing up on the State House lawn with signs anymore. They're actually out there doing grassroots work to try to get the candidate they want elected. Well,
you do see them, though. I mean, when I show up at rallies, I was at a rally about Obamacare about a month ago in Frankfurt. We had about 500 or 600. And that's not, 100,000, but that's not bad for political rallies when you go around. If you're a non-presidential candidate and you get 500 or 600 people to show up,
you're pretty happy.
It's usually a pretty good crowd. Yeah. I went down to Texas for Ted Cruz and went to a Freedom Works rally, and we had 20,000 people there.
Wow.
So, that was one of the bigger events of the season, and I think helped that momentum. Even though it wasn't specifically an event for Ted Cruz, he appeared there also. And I think that momentum did help him win.
All right. Well, we actually didn't get a time to talk about you, but give us the premise of your book very quickly.
Basically, Government Bullies is about how the government has taken regulatory breaches, often regulatory breaches that the person may not even know they've committed, but we're imprisoning people, sometimes for 5 and 10 years without probation. I go in through and tell some of these horrific stories, and I love to tell anecdotes because I think they sink in, and really, instead of just saying, regulations are overzealous, I tell them about Robbie Wrigley and her father, who were in jail for 10 years for putting clean dirt on dry land.
Wow. Well, I'm definitely going to read the book, and it's called The Government Bullies, How Everyday Americans Are Being Harassed, Abused, and Imprisoned by the Feds. Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Always a